Hi, I'm Dana Schwartz, and this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast for Peacock's original series, Those About to Die. On this podcast, I go behind the scenes with the show's cast and creators to learn how they brought their brutal vision of Rome to life. I talked to acclaimed director and executive producer Roland Emmerich.
When I saw the first race, I was like giddy.
Actor Ewan Ryan.
For an actor, that's a dream, although you do get a lot of sand in your sandals.
And so many more.
You helped summon those ghosts back onto that stage.
Every day when I went to set, I was giggling about what I saw.
I think it's going to be a breathtaking thing.
People will freak out.
Rise or Die launches on July 18th. Watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Contained herein are the heresies of Radolf Buntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I study the secrets of the divine plagues and uncover the blasphemous truth that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Radolf Buntwine, wherever podcasts are available.
Well, you know how bad I feel about this. Okay, it's eating me up. A quarter cup of brandy and let it simmer. But even though it's hard, we have to end this. Yes, he's been wronged, and I personally would be ready to apologize, but
someone put a stake in me.
Hey, oh my gosh. Hey, everybody.
Scared me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare anyone. It's us. We're here. Before we get started, we have a whole bunch of very exciting, it's going to be a real emotional roller coaster here in the cold open.
It is.
We have a lot to share with you. Let's do it.
So right out of the gates, we want to let you know that we will be taking a few weeks off. We're coming back hot into your ears with something very special for I Will Remember You. You might say, oh, but Kristen and Jenny, that's not an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And to that we say, but isn't it? So we are coming back October 3rd. We know that seems so very far away, but trust us, we have a jam-packed September for you.
It's like we're taking September off from making podcast episodes, but we are not taking September off.
That's correct.
On September 2nd, your friend Kristen will join Angel on Top for a I Will Remember You watch. So you'll be prepared. You'll begin your emotional preparation for our return on October 3rd.
Yes, it's true. I will join Brittany and Laura. And if you're a member of the Angel on Top Patreon, you know it's on the Facebook group. It's going to be really fun, or it's really sad. It's going to be whatever.
It'll be both.
We'll see. But you should join us. Speaking of watches, Jenny and I are doing a Buffy watch on September 8th. Just a few short days later, we will be watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie.
The feature-length film.
You have all been waiting for this, asking for this. So all of our patrons, you know where to find us on that secret Facebook page. We will be watching the movie on September 8th.
Yes. Then on September 16th, your hero, Jenny Owen Youngs, will be playing a Buffering the Vampire Slayer concert, streaming for anyone on Facebook Live. We'll play all of your favorite songs about demon lizards and ensouled vampires and forbidden, fated love and more demons. It's going to be hot.
And that's just to repeat, this is for everyone, that concert. Patrons and non-patrons alike will all be able to watch that concert completely for free, which is going to be really fun. And then it's not done. We're not even done.
So we're just halfway through the month.
September 19th, we're doing a mailbag for everyone. We do mailbags regularly for our patrons, but the month of September, we're going to give you a special mailbag for everybody. So that means if you've got things to send to us, send them to bufferingthevampireslayer@gmail.com. We'll be collecting those questions and doing a really special mailbag episode for you that comes out on the 19th.
And then on September 30th, wow. All of our patrons are welcome to join me, oh my gosh, Jenny Owen Youngs once again, for guitar lesson via the internet, if you want.
You're going to teach people to play the Buffy songs?
I'm going to try my dangdest to teach people to play the Buffy songs if they feel like it. So you can tune in, grab your guitar, join me, and I'll walk you through a few of our jams. And hopefully by the end of our session, you'll be able to play those songs for your cat or mom or whomever.
Yes. And so that's a lot of information to throw at you. All of that information can be found on our website, bufferingthevampireslayer.com. Just click on calendar, or if you're like really savvy, you know to go to bufferingthevampireslayer.com/Jenny Calendar, which is where you find our calendar.
Jenny Calendar.
Did you not know that was
my
the
God.
way?
I was like, my calendar. I'm an idiot. Okay.
2 other quick scheduling things. We are going to PodCon, Jenny.
What?
In Seattle on January 19th and the 20th. Holy shit. You can also go to PodCon remotely. And those tickets are up at podcon.com.
Do you know who's going to be there?
Who's going to be there?
Joseph Fink, Jeffrey Craner, our friend Rishi. Oh my God.
Kathy too. Yeah.
And also Tobin.
The 2 hosts of Still Buffering, who we don't know, but we feel
They're
like
definitely
we should.
our nemesis.
Yeah. And if you are across the pond, a reminder that we're going to be at the Vampire Ball, November 30th to December 3rd. Again, all of that information can be found on our calendar. We love you all. Okay, a couple of other announcements before we get into some, I think, really badass stuff that's going to happen in this episode. Yeah, Jenny?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have not known this yet, you will know this now. Patrons now have a new level of giving, the $25 level, and it's an exclusive merch level. So the exclusive merch has been decided upon. There will be a beautiful moss green t-shirt that says,
Giles in the streets, Ripper in the sheets.
And an enamel pin that says, the council is trash.
It's about time.
Now, here's the catch. You have to be pledging at the $25 level by the end of August to get that merch that goes out at the end of September, beginning of October. Okay, so
get it.
If you want this merch, like, you have to do it now, because if you pledge in September, you'll get the next round of merch, but you won't get this one. Okay, so here's your reminder. You've got a few days before the end of August. Get your little pledges in there, and then we'll get you your special merch. Yeah.
Speaking of hot merch, just want to remind you all that we have a flaming hot, amazing new shirt illustrated by Isabella Rotman and inspired by Heather Hogan. It's the Support Your Local Alewife shirt, and it's up now in our store, which is, of course, at bufferingthevampireslayer.com. Just click on shop, and you can find that and so many other delights ready for you.
Wow. Okay, so now a couple of things about this episode. So we're about to roll into Pangs, and we want to let you know that we had the distinct pleasure of getting to speak with Coya White Hat-Artichoker. Coya is an enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe, a writer, a poet, and speaker on issues regarding race, equity, and two-spirit identity. Coya has been involved in various communities and movements since she was 15 years old. And we are, and something that's not in her bio, she's a massive sci-fi Buffy fan. A little ways into the episode, you'll get to hear me speak with Coya about some of the themes and things that happen in this episode, bringing some light not only to what's happening in the episode, but also what's happening in our world currently, which I think is really special. I think it's a really, really wonderful gift that we were able to speak with Coya.
I've heard the conversation that you haven't heard yet, and it is so great. Also, we want to tell you that in lieu of a song this week, we'll be playing a selection from a speech given by Standing Rock elder Phyllis Young to the Energy Transfer Partners, the company behind the Dakota Access Pipeline. We felt like maybe we don't really care about Buffy's perspective by the end of this episode.
Yeah, rather than write a song from the perspective of white guilt, Jenny had the idea of doing 3 minutes of silence as the song, and then we sort of talked about it a little bit more and thought, well, silence is one thing, but what if we fill the silence with the words of someone who is a Native person? And so that's what we're doing at the end of this episode, though we are going to try to work on something special for when the album itself comes out. So there'll be a track for Pangs. But for this week, that's what we're using the time for.
Yes.
Also, last thing before we get into the episode. As you know, we occasionally do lyric sheets where we handwrite the lyrics to the song of your choice, any buffering song, and the proceeds from those lyric sheets go to benefit an organization. So, of course, for Pangs, in the month of September, we'll be doing 10 lyric sheets. So that's more than we normally do. We normally limit it to 5, but because we're taking the month off, we're going to do 10 lyric sheets, and all of those funds that we raise from the sales of those lyric sheets will go to the Native American Rights Rights Fund. The Native American Rights Fund has provided legal assistance to Indian tribes, organizations, and individuals nationwide who might otherwise have gone without adequate representation. They've been around since 1971. And something specific about this organization that I want to mention is that right now they're doing a lot of work around the Bears Ears National Monument. So if you don't know this, 40 years ago, the U.S. Congress passed the American Indian Religious Freedom Act so that Native people could practice their faith freely and access to their sacred sites would be protected. However, in our current world, their religious practice is threatened all over again. In December of this past year, the administration reduced the Bears Ears National Monument, an area that's been sacred to Native people in Utah, by over 1 million acres. So this is one of the many things that this organization is fighting against. We want to use this space in this episode, use our power as Scoobies, as buffering listeners and just people who love the show to raise funds here. So you can go over to bufferingthevampireslayer.com/greatergood, and that'll take you to the landing page where the lyric sheets will be up for sale. Pretty spectacular thing, I think, to do. You get a really cool lyric sheet, and you also give back to something that's really important. And we get to take this episode, which I think did some stuff, but as we'll talk about shortly, missed the mark in other places, and maybe hit the mark in some of the places where the episode did not. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, let's stop yammering about here.
So let's watch Anya being super hot and funny.
Yeah. Let's follow Riley home, perhaps, to his suburban Iowa lake with his dogs.
Let's tie Spike to a chair.
Yeah, you know what? Let's do that.
Let's tie Spike to a chair right now. Welcome to Buffering the Vampire Slayer, a podcast where we are watching and discussing every single episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer one at a time, spoiler free. I am Jenny Owen Youngs.
And I am Kristen Russo. And this week, we are so lucky to be talking about Season 4, Episode 8, Pangs. Stay tuned at the end of this podcast every week for an original song written by us recapping the Buffy episode we are discussing.
Pangs was written by Jane Espenson and directed by Michael Lang and originally aired November 23rd, 1999, at which point I had been 18 for one entire day.
Are we going to now begin the countdown to 19? Just 12 months before I turned 19.
Yeah, exactly.
November 23rd, 1999. No, Thanksgiving is when I came out to my parents, but it was the year prior. So this would mark my 1-year anniversary of being a gay.
Wow.
This is the one where, on Thanksgiving, Buffy encounters the spirit of a Native American warrior whose people were wiped out by settlers. That's the IMDb description. And as you can probably tell from the description alone, boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about here today.
Yes.
We're going to do our very best to talk about this episode, which is maybe the most controversial episode.
I can think of at least one
other one. So one of the top, probably two most controversial episodes of Buffy. There's a lot happening in here. And you know that we've referred to this book, Joss Whedon and Race. It's a collection of critical essays edited by Mary Ellen Iatropoulos and Lowry A. Woodall III. And the essay is called Let It Simmer, Tonal Shifts in Pangs by Rhonda V. Wilcox. I'm going to refer to it a couple of times as we talk. Actually, I think a lot of the things that I'm going to refer to are Rhonda referring to other people's critical essays. There's a lot of good quotes in here from some of the critical work that's been done around this episode. But I just want to start with a little quote from the beginning of the essay where Rhonda says, "It is unquestionably, as we just said, one of the most controversial episodes of Buffy. It is also one of Buffy creator Joss Whedon's declared favorites. As Jane Espenson says, quote, the core of it was something Joss had wanted to do for a long time, which is have a dead Indian at Thanksgiving. A very poetic illustration, I think, that we do kind of live in this country by virtue of some very ugly conquest. And then the next thing you know, we had a very non-threatening bear and some funny syphilis." right, like that's kind of the thing is like if we're talking about like writing and the arc.
It's some of like the sharpest.
It is absolutely
like,
brilliant.
There's some of the best, like Spike.
Yeah. I mean, the episode it's a brilliant episode of television structurally and like the way that it moves. The dialogue is written really brilliantly. But then when we look at what is happening in this episode, it's controversial for, I think, good reason. There's a lot of really fucked up shit that happens, but there's also, for me, a lot of like very interesting stuff that is brought up because, you know, this could have just been a Thanksgiving episode. A lot of television shows just have Thanksgiving episodes, right? Where nothing is challenged. It's just fucking Thanksgiving, and we're all sitting around, we're eating our turkey. And
what happens on the Friends episode of Thanksgiving?
Joey gets his head stuck in a turkey. That's all I remember.
Is that the same episode where they play football and Monica is like really competitive?
Great, and nobody's talking about right, like, and we'll watch Friends, and we're like, great, another show about
how we eat turkey at this time of year.
About how a group of white people get together to celebrate Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say that, you know, I think there is something in attempting to look at white guilt and attempting to look at the destruction, the destruction of a people.
Liberal, yeah, okay.
Yeah, all of these things. And we'll Jenny and I are going to do our best, but we're also going to bring in someone else to help us talk about this too, because, you know, we've done a little bit of work learning about these things, but certainly
surely we are not
the
most educated voices that could be speaking.
We are not, but we're still going to talk about this stuff. We're still going to talk about what happens in this episode. Let's just jump in here.
Can we start with the previously on?
Yeah, I actually didn't have any notes from the previously on this week.
These are all of my notes from the previously on.
Okay.
I was thinking of asking out Buffy. I've never courted anyone like Buffy before. Buffy, awkward pause.
Did you just write an erotic novel?
Nobody wants my Buffy Riley erotic novels.
I think
nobody wants it.
Jenny Mark Blucas erotic novels.
Yeah,
if we're being real.
Truly. Then I have a quick sidebar. Is it just me, or is Professor Walsh's hair like markedly different when she's in the classroom versus when she's in the underground lab? When she's in the classroom, it's like soft mom hair, and then downstairs it's like I gelled.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot more gel. It's a lot firmer, harder edges.
She gets butcher down there. And then my last note is, you're a little peculiar. I can live with that.
Oh, so your notes were just you writing down all of the dialogue.
It's just like everything that Riley has, like the previously on was like, there's other stuff that happens in the previously on, but there's a solid block of, hey, did you guys remember Riley? Riley, he's into Buffy now.
Do you remember the guitar strings that play every time Riley's on?
Ding, ding, ding.
So after the previously on, we go through the credits. And we get to the opening scene, to which my first note is, oh my God, remember fleece vests?
Yeah, this vampire just got off work at North Face.
Yeah.
And
did you have a fleece vest?
Probably.
Right.
I definitely had some fleece items. I don't remember.
Oh, sure.
Like hats, over long sleeve thingies, probably a vest in there somewhere in the collection.
The fleece vest was a really hot ticket item in the
90s. Why?
And this vamp is very interesting to me, right? Because he, first of all, doesn't want to be bothered. He's strolling along and Buffy's like, excuse me. And like Buffy has to make him angry for him to show that he's a vampire.
Right. He's just trying to fly under the radar.
He is. He's trying to go about, and here's one of our very first little parallels, I think, is he's trying to just live his life as a vampire. And here comes this Slayer who's like, tap, 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 I'm going to kill you. And he has a line where he says, go back to where you came from. You know, like, why don't you just go back to where you came from?
Things were great before you came. Okay, so I'm just going to mention, though, that she's been in Sunnydale for like 3 years.
Right.
So does he mean like before she got to campus?
Yeah, well.
But like I think campus officially would be in her patrol range.
I think what he means, or would you like to keep going with this,
No,
Jenny?
no,
Please.
I'm sorry. Obviously, they're just trying to accomplish something. Please go on.
I just think that this is supposed to kind of give us this little parallel of like people coming into the territory of other people and
vampire slayer imperialism.
Exactly, precisely.
I mean, this is like something we've touched on very lightly before, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's up with just like free range to kill vampires?
Right. What gives you the right? Who says what's right here? Animals hunt other animals all the time. Where do we draw the lines? But yeah, this is in this episode specifically to set us up with this like, who was here first and what does that mean kind of thing. But also this vampire's weird. Why does he talk like the way that he talks? You know, it's like once he vamps out, he becomes like those guys in Scream with their little fucking vocoder things.
Yeah, and he's all like, Slayer. Yeah. I think that's pretty much verbatim the deal. And then you know what else is happening in this scene? These two aren't just fighting unobserved.
Oh, they're not, Jenny.
No, someone's in the bushes.
Who is it?
Detective Angel. Yeah, so our sister podcast, Angel on Top, Laura, Zach, and Brittany Ashley talk a lot on there about how Angel is essentially just a stalker. He's a stalky boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like something, we didn't necessarily like entirely miss it, but I feel like we focused more in the show on like how detective he is and less how like, dude, why are you like always looking in windows and hiding in the bushes or whatever? This is the first time I've seen it through their eyes.
I see.
In the Buffy context. Angel, you're being a creep.
Well, and he's there. We should contextualize this just in case people are only watching Buffy and not Angel. But in the last episode of Angel, the bachelor party, the episode ends with Doyle having a vision of Buffy in peril. And so that's why Angel has gone to Sunnydale.
I want you to know that when you said Buffy in peril, I got full body goosebumps. What is wrong with me?
You were worried about her?
I'm just like engaged. And like, I know what happens.
Yeah. What's weird is that like, I don't really feel like Buffy was any more in danger in this episode than she's been. It's not like Doyle had a vision and like Angel showed up and it was graduation day part 2. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it doesn't seem.
Yeah. Did Angel being there make much of a difference?
No. Well, they have this in the end scene. He does like snap a bunch of necks and like.
But those spirits are dying by his hand. He's just kind of like
temporarily pausing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is setting us up.
Yes.
We're being set up here for more, what more that is to come. But not much happens in this episode that has really changed by Angel, except us getting to play the Detective Angel jingle a couple times.
Hooray.
Which is everyone's favorite thing to do. So after the credits, we go to this groundbreaking ceremony.
Okay, first of all, this woman, let's just call her the anthropologist. I think technically she's the director of the Cultural Studies Center or something, but let's just call her the anthropologist because that's a few syllables shorter. Her pantsuit is so oversized, and I didn't want to let it go unmentioned.
Well, there's a lot of fashion to talk about in this scene because after we see her oversized pantsuit, we pan over to the trio of Scoobies we have over here, Buffy, Anya, and Willow, and oh boy, are they wearing some outfits.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about it, please.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so first of all, much has been made of Buffy's black cowboy hat in this scene, which of course sets us up for the age-old trope of cowboys versus Indians. Right. And she's wearing a black hat, which indicates a certain amount of villainry, traditionally. But also, I'm more interested in this hat in this moment for a different reason, because Anya's like, have you ever seen anything so masculine? And then Buffy, looking at construction worker Xander, is like, oh yeah, very manly, not at all village people. She said from underneath her cowboy hat.
Good point.
People in cowboy hats shouldn't throw village people stones, is my personal opinion.
Very solid thesis statement, very solid argument. 5 points to Gryffindor. I mean Ravenclaw.
Thank you.
So, yeah, everybody's wearing some choice clothing. This is really, I mean, Anya's been coming out of her Anya shell. This is it.
The best episode for Anya so far.
Anya,
she's crushing.
Anya really is just fantastic in this episode. Like, the whole time through. Anya is like the character that just sees through all of the bullshit and is like, your ritual sacrifice? And they're like, what do you mean?
Dude.
Yes.
It's so great.
Yeah, it is. She's great. I really hope, Jenny, I don't know who you picked for the sexual tension award nominees. I know we'll find out at the end, but I'm really hoping that Anya gets some play here because I just feel like Anya wanted to fuck everybody in the episode.
Yeah,
like they literally leave the dean's house later and she's like, I really liked his wife.
But she isn't like taking subpar entries, when she's waiting for Xander to start digging and the anthropologist digs first, she's like, she's not rippling at all. She was ready to be open.
Yes,
but
to
no
any gender, but no rippling. As long as you've got ripples, Anya's into you this episode. Probably any episode.
We also find out here that Willow's family doesn't observe Thanksgiving.
Yes, which is really one of the first positive things I've heard about her mom doing since the start of the series.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing, right?
Because her mom's been a witch-burning nightmare up until this point.
And also like a shrinking your own kid nightmare.
Right, right. So this scene... I mean, God, there's so many scenes in this episode, but this moment where Willow is like, the destruction of an indigenous people is not the fucking melting pot, right? And we get from the anthropologist, I like that we're calling her the anthropologist. We get from the anthropologist that, like, you know, this country is a melting pot. I think she specifically says something like contributions from all cultures making our culture stronger, right? And
that does sound like some bullshit.
It does sound like some fucking bullshit. And also, like, I think something that this episode does underline in a way that is accurate is the way that white people specifically can gloss over the truth of a thing to make it seem like this very wonderful, beautiful journey that we're all going on together. When in fact, when you pick up the fucking covers and look underneath, it's like, in this case, the destruction of a people. And I do want to point out too that the Shumash people are the focus of this episode. And one glaring discrepancy is that the narrative of this whole episode is like they've been wiped out completely. They've been exterminated. That's not true. One of the pieces referenced in this essay by Rhonda Wilcox is a piece by Dominic Alessio, who in 2001, this essay says that Dominic sounded the first major note in the debate on Pangs with his condemnation of the episode as essentially colonialist. And I bring up his points because one of his important points that he brought up in 2001 was that there are, in fact, approximately 3,500 Shumash living across the United States, some still in California. I also want to point out that looking into the Shumash people, they are mostly in the Santa Barbara area. So, like,
oh yeah,
just one more little penny in the bucket for
Sunnydale is Santa Barbara.
For Sunnydale is Santa Barbara.
Yes.
So Willow's calling out the anthropologist on her bullshit, on the general bullshit that the melting pot usually represents. And Buffy, and you're pointing out like the color of Buffy's hat and the fact that Buffy's really set up in a way in this episode to have her be, I mean, not the villain is probably the wrong word, but she's not the good guy. She's not on the right side of this debate. She struggles with it as we walk into the episode. But like her response to Willow saying these like really important, impactful things is like,
I never thought about it that way before.
Right.
Because I've never had to think about it.
I didn't think about it before. Also, and then she changes the subject. Like,
I just want the turkey.
Right. It's and that's okay. So this is really a fucking episode because that's a whole nother thing, right? That Buffy, if we can go there now, Buffy wants to host Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and she wants to do it for reasons of like comfort.
Yeah, and nostalgia and chosen family. Like there's
positives.
Yeah, there's absolute value in like her wanting to assemble with her closest people and like observe a tradition that she is used to that makes her feel warm and familial.
What doesn't feel great about like the overall arc of this episode is that like Buffy's conflict is sort of like her in between what the Shumash spirit guy represents and then like she just wants to have Thanksgiving because that's what she wants. And she doesn't want to think about it. She just wants the tradition that she had, like the American traditionalism thing that like runs through this whole episode. We have so many things that we just like that are so ingrained in our experience of whatever, American culture that like, you know, you have the luxury of not thinking about where they come from and what their roots are.
Exactly. And the privilege of saying like, but having turkey around the table is so nice without examining anything. And I'm not sorry that I keep referencing these essays, but there's a part in this essay that talks about that. Later in the episode, there's this quarter cup. It's the sound clip we played at the beginning of the episode where she's sort of like talking about her guilt and then she interrupts herself to say a quarter cup of brandy and let it simmer, right? And so Here, Rhonda Wilcox says, with Buffy's quarter cup of brandy interruption, there's the intrusion of the personal into the political. I wouldn't say that the effect is to make a mockery of concern for the Shumash. Instead, it makes a mockery of the speaker, Buffy. Fond of her though many of us may be. The tonal shift suggests not a debasement of the significance of the issue, but a weakness in Buffy, a very human weakness in a person many of us identify with. A weakness in someone who asserts conscientious consideration for the social issue, but who at this moment is more involved in getting dinner than righting wrongs. And that isn't
at
that
this
it?
moment.
Isn't that the America that we fucking live in? Like, it's just like everybody's too fucking busy, and they're too busy with their own lives and their own kids and their own this and their own that they can't really stop for a second to put down the fucking quarter cup of brandy and say, you know, this is actually really important because it doesn't affect them. It doesn't. This doesn't affect Buffy, and we're seeing her like struggle with it, and we'll talk about it more because now I've really taken us to like the 3/4 mark of the episode. But these are the themes in this episode. Like, we're coming out heavy because this is a really heavy episode. There's a lot in here.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Xander digs.
Xander digs.
See Xander dig. See Xander fall into pit. Hear ominous flute music.
Of course. Yet one more, like, this is like the same flute that we heard for
in Inca Mummy Girl. It's the same fucking shit.
Right. It's like,
get that flute player we had for Inca Mummy.
Yeah.
Get them back in.
Did the Shumash even use flutes? Who cares?
Yeah,
who cares? Just put that fucking
people
flute.
will know it.
People get it.
White American people watching this show will know. Like, this will trigger for them what we need to trigger in them.
Yes. Oh, lots of problems in this episode.
Now, you know what else?
Wait, but before we change scenes,
okay.
I just want to talk about two things that we missed with Anya. One, Anya's line, "It's a ritual sacrifice with pie."
Yeah.
And two, Anya twice in this scene saying,
"Oh God,
I'm imagining having sex with him right now." It's like, Anya, what are you up to here? Like, do you know what I mean? Where are you going? Where are you headed? Talking about your sexual fantasies with these ladies.
Oh.
Just saying.
You think she's knocking at the...
Just
okay.
Knocking on threesome
Buffy.
door.
So, okay.
Yes.
So,
then you know what happens?
Detective Angel. Are we sure that we shouldn't change the jingle to like Stalker Angel?
Real lurky angel.
So like, this is not the only time this happens in this episode. There are multiple moments where it feels like Buffy has some kind of like spidey sense tingling because Angel's around, but she doesn't know why. Have we ever like, that feels like very overt, but it's not something that's like addressed or
ever, right? It's just like supposed to be their soul.
Oh, their true, deepest love. Yes. She's like, I smell clues and detective work.
I smell the leather-bound copy of Nausea.
I hear the yonder distant rustling of leather duster.
What are all these buttons scattered across the floor? So
cool. So Angel is staring up at Buffy's window, and we're like, that's creepy. And until we see Buffy staring out her window.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, maybe
a lot
they
of windows
deserve each other.
A lot of people staring through windows in this episode. That's like a whole theme. It's like Spike looking in on the feeding and Angel looking in on the... That's a whole thing. So we're in the dorm room after Angel lurks for a moment and Buffy's looking out the dorm room window. I want to say I'm very surprised that Willow still has her Dingoes poster up on the wall.
Oh yeah, no, but she's holding out hope that like Oz is coming back any minute.
But she's playing like sad music. Don't you think that like she would have had at least one night where she's playing sad music and she took it down?
No, she's too gentle.
Oh, it's so sad. Okay.
Speaking of gentle, I just want to note that Buffy is seen holding a stuffed cow. Not her stuffed pig, Mr. Gordo.
Oh my God, the whole time I was like, oh, it's Mr. Gordo. I forgot that it was a stuffed pig and not a stuffed cow.
Allegedly a pig.
I wonder what the cow's name is.
Don't know.
Well.
She also decides she's going to throw Thanksgiving in this scene.
Yes, it's a sham, Willow says. It's a sham with yams, says Buffy.
A yam sham.
A yam sham. Great dialogue. I mean, this is Jane Espenson, right? Or Espenson, however we say her last name. She's an incredible dialogue writer.
Also, Willow's like, ooh, we could not invite Anya. I feel like Anya rocks. Why? I guess Willow has residual Xander
Possessiveness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fucking Anya rocks though.
And Willow caves to Buffy, which I feel is like, I feel like Willow is seeing like the nostalgic end of things, and Buffy says everything's different now. She can tell her friend is sad. She wants to help her friend, but she also wants to like not be complicit in this racist fucking situation. It's like a real challenge for Willow. But they decide they're going to have Thanksgiving, and Spike,
dude, there's so many. Okay, can we just like talk for once? Okay, what's that movie where like a girl is selling flowers to buy matches, or selling matches to buy food, or like I think she's
like that time you tried to tell that Bible story. The 2 pennies. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of some particular like iconic occurrence in popular culture of like a small girl who might be like an orphan who is like cold.
She has
living
2
on
pennies.
the streets. She has 2 pennies and 1 blanket that's full of holes. I love
that. The blanket.
The blanket is full of holes, and also he's like pulling it like over his duster.
Yeah.
Like he's wearing a leather. I mean, I get that like what we're seeing is like Spike can't eat, so it's like making his body all fucked up, and like he's way colder than he would normally be. He's like maybe colder than room temperature. We don't know. Or he is having a hard time.
Right.
And he's so cold that he needs a blanket over his floor-length leather jacket.
That is full of holes. It's very dramatic.
Yeah.
Then Riley and his bros are in the fucking woods. My note is Riley and his bros, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's going home for Thanksgiving.
They've added camo face paint.
Yes.
Lord,
which seems
have mercy.
Really unnecessary.
On me,
gentlemen. So then Xander's got syphilis.
Oh
we don't know that yet.
So sick.
They really, like, the makeup team on this episode did a great job with Xander. He really does look like he has
looks like he's on death.
Malaria and
malaria. Yeah, totally. Oh my God. And then we get to see a decidedly human portion of Anya. Well, we've seen a lot of human
Anya.
Yeah. Her libido is human. Her desire to care for a very, very sick Xander is human. Her declaration when he is like talking about dying, she's like, "We'll die together." It's romantic. That feels pretty human to me.
And then
he says, "You're a strange girlfriend."
And it's like record scratch. And he's like, "Say what?
What did you call me?"
And Xander's like, "Oh, it's the disease talking." And she's like, "Well, I kind of like the disease."
Yeah, she's into it.
Yeah. Then a green mist suddenly
materializes into the vengeful spirit of a Shumash dude.
Yeah, Shumash dude who I actually in reading this essay I couldn't tell. Does he have a name in the episode, or he was supposed to have a name?
Why bother naming the?
Well, Jane Espenson did though. In the original script, this Shumash, Hus, H-U-S, I believe, had not only had a name, but also was the one who delivered the information about his people, rather than it coming from like Willow and her books. It actually was him speaking about the injustices done to his people. So, that's kind of a major shift that was taken out and changed, but probably a better way to have had that delivered would have been exactly that. Anyway, he arises.
He also might have been like, actually, there's about 3,500 of us.
Yeah. If we let him speak, he probably would have said a couple of factual things a little bit differently. So he gets the knife, the knife out of the case. That the case that was probably like a knife taken peacefully from the Shumash, and he totally kills the shit out of the anthropologist.
That's one dead anthropologist.
Sorry.
Willow has some theories. Once she and Buffy
get to the crime scene.
She's like, so I'm thinking it's a witch. There's some great spells that work much better with an ear in the mix.
Yeah.
Because the anthropologist's ear was removed. And then she like spins out a little farther and is like, or an ear harvesting demon building a demon completely out of ears.
Yeah, which please, those of you who are listening who are artists, please send us.
I don't want to see that. Don't send that. Okay,
I want to see the rendering of ear demon and ear demon made entirely of ears.
And then she goes into Van Gogh to round out her bizarre collection of theories.
Her ear monologue.
Yeah.
So we go to Giles and
oh my God. As a resident of Southern California, I can finally appreciate this line. I don't know if you caught this. Buffy's like, it was more like a riot than a Ralph's.
Oh.
Ralph's is a grocery store chain that I don't know how far it extends, but it's all over Los Angeles.
Yes. And now you know. Now you too have shopped at a Ralph's.
Wow.
Just like Buffy.
I've never experienced a Ralph being more like a riot so far, and I hope I never do.
So we get more of this back and forth, also more of her sensing Angel. We get more of the back and forth, Buffy saying to Giles, if you're going to move to this country, you have to assume our traditions, because Giles is, of course, annoyed that Thanksgiving is being hosted at his house because he knows he's going to get stuck with the cleanup. But it's just a little bit more of these like one-liners of, it's our culture, so assimilate. It's our culture, so blah, blah, blah. And then, hey, who's together again, Jenny, but Angel and his boyfriend, Giles. Jangel.
Oh, no, we said Ann Giles, didn't we?
Ann Giles was their official couple name. Just like the way that he walks out and
But this is immediately preceded by Buffy having another like spider sense. She just is like, and is like, I have to go get more whipped cream supplies.
Right. And then like dad and ex-boyfriend really go into it here, where there's a little reference to Angel with Doyle having a vision that's talked about. And then it's really like, who it's not your job. And Angel's like, well, it's not yours either. Yeah. There's basically two dudes telling each other to stop protecting a lady. Meanwhile, Buffy's like, everybody you just fuck off. I'm going to get whipped cream.
Yeah.
The patriarchy! Before we go to the espresso pump, where I believe we both will have a lot to say, let's just hear a couple of words from our sponsors.
Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. And if you have sensitive skin, you're going to want to hear about their scientifically proven topical supplements. Free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make skin red, irritated, or itchy, their products are safe for sensitive skin. It's just one of the reasons they've earned the skin-safe seal of approval.
They've also earned the Jenny Owen Youngs and Kristen Russo seal of approval, if I do say so myself, Jenny.
I couldn't agree more. I've been using OneSkin for a few months, and after a few weeks, I remember it like it was yesterday. I texted Kristen, and I was like, maybe she's born with it. I looked in the mirror that morning and was like, oh, things are happening, and I am happy.
I have used 1 billion skin products, and I did not think that I was going to switch off of the skin like lotion, the moisturizer that I used, and the under eye cream that I use, because I have used them for a little while and I really like them. And I've switched completely, which is a pretty big deal. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. Get started today with 15% off using code BUFFERING at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with code BUFFERING. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, and if you can, please tell them that we sent you.
As a podcast network, our focus is bringing you shows you love to listen to. But we also sell merch related to those shows. And partnering with Shopify has made that both possible and simple for us to do. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor adventures, Shopify helps you sell everywhere because they've got you covered, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. What's so fantastic about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, they provide everything you need to get control of your business so you can take it to the next level. Businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/realm.
Hello, I'm Simon Jack.
And I'm Zing Sing.
And together we host Good Bad Billionaire, the podcast exploring the minds, the motives, and the money of some of the world's richest individuals.
Every episode, we pick a billionaire and we find out how they made their money.
And then we judge them. Are they good, bad, or just another billionaire?
Good Bad Billionaire from the BBC World Service.
Listen now wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. So here we are at the fucking espresso pump.
Having just run over from 3 blocks up and 2 blocks over.
Yeah. Riley's got a crush. A crush. And Willow is fucking hilarious. Allison Hannigan, I know we say it a lot, but like she's
so great.
Oh my God, she's incredible. Her comedic timing and delivery is just really on point. And she just has this moment where she's like, hey, how about that coffee that they serve here? We gotta go. And, like, runs off because she wants Buffy and Riley to start dating.
Yes.
And then Angel
grabs her and covers her mouth.
Why doesn't he just? It's like he didn't leave evil. It's not like Willow would see him and be like, oh my God, it's Angel. Like,
I know, he's just so dramatic and
very dramatic.
But maybe her first response to seeing Angel would instinctively be to be like, Buffy.
Right.
I just turned my head and said, Buffy. I don't know if you could tell.
It just seems over the top, but he grabs Willow and she's like, are you evil? Are you evil now? Like, underneath his hand.
Yep.
He's like, no, I'm not evil, which is like this tiny little thread.
Exactly what an evil person would say.
And it's kind of a recurring thing, like, because it happens later with Xander, and he's like, why does everybody think I'm evil? Like, well, dude, because you literally had some epic evil moments in the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and he's all like, Buffy can't know I'm here. Buffy's in danger. And then she does this whole like, I've had it with this, like, I'm leaving for her own good garbage.
Yes.
Like, you can't just give up because there's obstacles. And Angel's like,
Hector projector.
yeah. And then Willow's like, oh, sorry, it's my stuff. Sorry.
And then Willow does this amazing thing where, like, obviously there's a lot in this episode, so we don't have a lot of time to, like, let them have the conversation we want them to have. We get a little taste of it with her being like, of all the people you could have hired, man. Cordelia? And to that, Jenny, I say, we don't get a Cordelia name drop in many an episode, so shall we just play the Cordelia jingle for old time's sake?
Cordelia, I love you, Cordelia. You're perfect, Cordelia.
So, of course, Angel has a very pressing question. His concern for Buffy.
He's so worried. Oh, gosh. What? Can you just tell me, who is that guy?
Who is that guy? He wants.
Wow.
Who is that guy who looks like me left out in the sun?
Butterscotch.
And meanwhile, Buffy is making some massive moves outside.
Yeah. Wow. She just invites him to Thanksgiving. It's like a no parents Thanksgiving.
Sure, but it's still pretty big.
Do you want to come to Thanksgiving with me, my 3 friends, and the librarian from my high school?
Yeah, and also a vampire. She doesn't know that part yet, but would have been a great time if Riley had shown up.
Good
would not
thing.
it have been.
Yeah. But we find out that Riley's from Iowa, and I don't mean to like whatever.
Can you hear me rolling my eyes? Because I'm rolling them, audience.
I don't think you can argue with this. The Riley Finn family Thanksgiving sounds pretty tight. It's on a farm. After dinner, they take a walk with the dogs down by the river, and there's lots of trees.
What I liked about this moment was that I was like, I wrote the note, oh, brother Riley. And after I did that, he was like, I know it sounds like a fucking whoever painting. Like, you know, like he like, what I liked was that he called himself out on like how cookie cutter,
how idyllic
Iowa.
and peaceful and lovely that sounds.
Yes.
Yeah, punish him.
So you know who? Speaking of punishing him, let's go to the next scene where Harmony has been doing a lot of reading of self-help books.
I love her.
Her line, I wrote it in all caps. I've been doing a lot of reading and I'm in control of my own power.
Yeah.
Incredible. And she fucking holds her own because you think she's gonna
cave,
and she
but
does
she
not.
is powerful and beautiful and doesn't need Spike to complete her. And also she has a stake in their bed.
A stake underneath the bed, which is a hilarious thing that imagine a vampire sleeping with a stake under their bed.
Right. Like you might roll over onto that in
Right.
the middle of the night.
Be careful, Harm.
Or the middle
She's
of the day.
setting fires, sleeping on stakes.
Yep.
Also, I just want to give a tiny little shout to her hair. She's like, it's like pulled back and it looks like it's just pulled back. But then when you see the back of her head and the side of her head, it's all these like teeny tiny little ponytails. Really good.
I did not see that.
No, I did. I'm representing for the femmes over here. I saw all of her ponytails and I liked them. But yeah, Spike is...
sorry.
Yes.
I just want to note that Angel is wearing, in this episode, black pants, a dark red button-down shirt, and a black leather duster.
Wow. There
You
must have
think
been a
Angel
sale
and Spike are going to make out
at prom.
at Burlington Vamp Factory?
Yeah, I think there was a sale on red vampire like t-shirt or button-ups. So Harmony kicks Spike out. Spike's really pathetic, just like, please, could I just have something to eat before I go?
Poor Spike, he's so hungry.
He's so
As somebody
hungry.
who becomes a different person when I'm really hungry, I have a lot of feelings for Spike.
That's why you don't fucking just shit on people all the time, Spike, is then when you need something, they're not going to be there for you.
True.
Not for shelter, not for sex, and not for food. Harmony is like, get out and stay out. And I wish we had a Harmony jingle for this episode for her. But, we're working on Giles, so...
Yeah. Hang in there.
Yeah. So Father Gabriel had 7 sons. And 7 sons had Father Gabriel.
What?
Do you know that song from camp? I think it's Father Abraham.
Oh,
Father Abraham.
That sounds
Had 7
vaguely biblical and familiar.
Well, Father Gabriel, we learn, is dead.
Yes, we do learn that. And he's been hanged.
Yes. He has been hanged by Hoos, who earlier we weren't sure if Hoos had a name in the episode or not. And he does, because this is the moment, the only time that we hear his name. He references it in his speech where he says, I am vengeance, I am my people's cry. And this is the moment of conflict for Buffy. It's like all the things that Willow's been saying in the episode are like settling into place. And she's like, how am I just going to kill this man, the spirit? It's not a black and white thing. It's a gray area for her. She feels conflicted. And like that, this episode is, I don't think it does a good job, but there are pieces of it that like, if it had just been like done well, like this part is, I'm here for it. I'm here for like Buffy being privileged, not understanding her privilege, starting to learn that she has privilege, starting to learn there's more complex things happening, and then doing something about it. And that's where the episode really peters out for me.
Yeah.
But in this moment, she doesn't kill him because she's conflicted, and she goes back to Giles and she's like, I don't fucking know what to do. I don't know. And that's when our arguments begin.
Right. Do we want to also just mention that Hoos, before departing, busts into
fucking birds?
A flock of crows or ravens or something. First of all, cool. Second of all,
very cool effect.
Fetishization of
the
mysticism inherent in Native American,
because it's he's birds, he's a wolf, and then of course
wolf, or I think coyote.
A coyote. Oh, well, you would know.
Blending
Jenny.
in Southern California.
That's true. Maybe it was just actually maybe that was nobody. Maybe it was just a coyote.
That could have just been a coyote.
And they just were really dramatic about a coyote showing up.
They're like, everybody's looking in the windows.
Yeah.
Angel, Spike, this coyote.
Yeah, but it's like you want the episode to highlight the things it's highlighting about the destruction of an entire people, but do you also want to believe that more research was done here and more was put into it, and because we know that there are still Shumash people, we know that like there wasn't a ton that went into, it seems like there wasn't a ton that went into the research, and so then when you pair that with like birds and a coyote and a bear, it's like are we trying to?
We are watching like a supernatural dramatic comedy that has a lot of like monster of the week stuff, right? So they're like leaning as hard, like wherever they can lean into like those ideas within what's actually happening in this episode, they're doing it. But also like I think it's important to maybe look at that a little more critically.
Yeah, right. And I think that we're watching a show where the creators are primarily white, The writers are primarily white. The cast is primarily white. And I think the very bottom of it all, we at least have to say, let's look at this critically, because these are white people.
Because nobody did before, so
yeah.
God, somebody
These
should.
are white. This is a bunch of white people ostensibly writing a narrative to, and white people should be definitely like trying to unpack this and trying to write narratives and trying to tell stories about this. But I don't think that, especially in '99, we were in a place in Hollywood where Hollywood felt accountable enough to really do the work properly. Okay, before you and I talk about this too much, though probably you can't talk about it too much, but I think that we should go now to the conversation that I was able to have with Coya White Hat-Artichoker. Coya is a huge Buffy fan and an enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. Coya is also going to tell you even more about herself when we get into the interview. We talked about some of the things that we've already talked about in the episode and many things that we haven't covered here yet. It was a true pleasure to speak with her, and I think you'll feel the same. Coya, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to speak with us. This is a really controversial episode, an episode that I think really warrants a bigger, deeper discussion of some things. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be invited. I love Buffy, so.
That's their commonality, right? That's what brings everybody to the table, is our love for Buffy. And what's so cool is that like our love for Buffy then brings out these conversations about other things in the world. And I maybe a good place for us to start is you just telling us a little bit about who you are, and obviously that'll contextualize why you're speaking with us today.
Yeah, sure. No problem. My name is Coya White Hat-Artichoker. I am Sicangu Lakota from the Rosebud Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. I'm an enrolled member, and I am a two-spirit, queer, feminist, activist type person, and I've been doing organizing work in different movements for about 20 years, and I am also a huge sci-fi nerd. And I love everything sci-fi. So when Buffy, I was late to the game with Buffy, but I fully embraced it. So
you sit perfectly at the Venn diagram,
right? Exactly.
of today's conversation. Yes, and that's really exciting. And we're going to get into the specifics of the episode, but you and I had the chance to talk a little bit before sitting down here to record our conversation. And a couple of things came up. One of them was a little bit, we talked about the California missions. And that's something that you had a story to share about, something that kind of brings this to the present. Obviously, the California missions are kind of a cornerstone of the narrative of this episode. So I'd love to share that with our listeners.
When you look at what happened to the Native people in California, it's actually unlike other places in the country, and it's really destructive. There was a really intentional sort of campaign, and you see it because the missions were throughout California. So there was an intentional campaign to sort of assimilate and destroy culture of Native folks in California. And there are also it's no accident that there are very few federally recognized California tribes. And when you have federal recognition, then that is how people enforce treaties. So they sort of managed to do this campaign of setting up these missions and assimilating and or killing folks into sort of, Christian culture. And you see that with boarding schools in the Midwest or in Canada. But they really amped it up and got real systematic about it in California. And a lot of that had to do with the gold rush and just the resources that California has. And also, the other thing is, I know in the modern day context, I have a friend who is a PhD candidate in the UC California system. And she was talking about how her daughter was taught about the California missions for a week in her school and had to write up a story about it and talk about it, and never in a context of critiquing it. And so it was really painful for her as a Native woman to have her daughter being taught that they didn't do anything really wrong as much as they were trying to civilize Native people.
And this is when was this happening? This is now, this is 10 years ago. When was her daughter in school?
This is a year and a half ago.
I mean, it's atrocious that that kind of instruction and education happened at any time. But I do think that a lot of us think that that has stopped, that we are no longer learning these false things, or that like kids aren't learning filtered tales of things that that were really, really horrible. It's very upsetting. And I think that's why you and I are having this conversation of that this isn't something that happened, hundreds of years ago. And this isn't just something that happened 50 years ago. And this isn't something that was just going on in an episode of Buffy 20 years ago. This is something that is like today actively happening.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, it's one thing where it's like children in California. It's another to like be a Native child and have to sit in a classroom and to have to hold both worlds in that moment.
Something else that I wanted to talk to you about, Coya, in our conversations, you've used a variety of words to describe Native people or to refer to Native people. And that's a piece of this episode. This is 1999 and, Giles says Indian and Buffy says, sorry, that's not what we say anymore. We say Native American. And I've heard, in our conversations, you've used Native person as well as Indian, all to describe Native people, Indigenous people. And so I would just love to hear a little bit more from you on language and our use of language and your thoughts on those terms.
Sure. And Willow also used Indigenous at one point. She referenced, I meet Indigenous people and within like 5 minutes, I'm acting like Custer. I thought it was kind of funny. Lakota. I think that, language is really always important. I myself, I don't like to use the term Native American because our people existed here before America existed. I think oftentimes it's really the best course of action is to ask people, what do you want to be referred to? Because there are 562 distinct nations recognized by the federal government in the United States, Alaska, and Hawaii. So we have names that we call ourselves, our people. And then, we have words that we use for political purposes. So like I call myself Indian because we grew up calling ourselves Indians, even though it's a misnomer, it's not correct. It comes directly from Christopher Columbus. But if you ask me, like I say, I'm Sichangu Lakota, which is my band and which is part of the larger Osheti-Shakowin, the three nations that comprise the Osheti-Shakowin, which is all of the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people. So, and it's similar, like you call people Navajo, but if you ask them what they call themselves Dene. So I think language is really important to pay attention to. And I think if you don't know, it's just better to ask. I think we say that about gender and like queerness all the time, as if you are unsure. You should just ask, what do you want to be referred to as? And people will tell you different things. And I make my distinctions based on my background in political organizing. And also, the word Indigenous was used, and I use that word because it allows me to have solidarity with other tribal folks from South America and Mexico. And it's a recognition that our people have walked this continent since time immemorial, and we know that. And these borders are constructed, and they're false to us.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I did hear echoes of conversations that I have definitely in regard to sexuality and gender around language. And I think that for so many of us, it's really just being able to feel comfortable asking questions and also being respectful enough to then listen to those answers, use those words, and ask questions if you then meet somebody else, that we're not just blanket statement, using these words as blanket statements for everyone, but for individual people and individual experiences. So let's talk a little bit about the episode itself, right? Pangs comes in the Thanksgiving episode and does something that most episodes of Thanksgiving television don't do, in that it brings in the racism, the violence associated with the holiday. But it struggles and fails. I know I'm not going to put those words in your mouth, but that's how I feel in many ways. And I'm wondering if you have some takeaways from this episode or major things that you'd like to talk about.
I think that it's one of those things where, like, I applaud Joss Whedon for, like, taking a stab at it and the team behind Buffy, because I think it's in that it's in a sci-fi realm where you can create this sort of situation to sort of wrestle with the kind of moral issues there. I agree with you. I think at the end, they probably did not land where I wish they would have landed. I grew up as a very spiritual, cultural person. And so I do have a belief system that involves spirits. And I do believe that there are ways to sort of reckon with the past that allow people to move on. And I didn't see that here. I think that, even as Lakota people, we have ceremonies for our grief, and ways in which we sort of try to move our people forward, move ourselves forward, and recognize the past, but like to let it go in a way that's healthy and in a good way. And what I saw here was more of a, yes, we recognize this, we see that it could be real, and in the end, we're still going to destroy the Indian.
We see lots of demons, spirits, etc. in the Buffyverse who are complex, right? They're not just evil. Like this character of Hoos is sort of positioned as a complex character, but also no one really engages him and speaks to him and talks to him about anything. Whereas we have Oz, we have Angel, we have all of these other characters where they may have come to us, or they may have parts of them that are doing things that are harmful, like Hoos is killing people and cutting off people's ears and things like this. But there's no conversation that's ever had. And we'll talk about this a little more, but I thought that was an interesting parallel to draw between the lack of dialogue that really happens here between them.
Well, I think it's also I could be wrong here, but it could also be like a bigger metaphor for just how this country deals with Native folks in general. It's very much, I think people feel a lot of guilt or moral ambiguity about what has happened to Native people in this country and in the history of this country, while at the same time being completely incapable of actually tackling that history. And so the reaction becomes there is no redemption for the savage warrior, or that we don't know what else to do but to ignore the problem. And the best way to ignore the problem is to kill the problem.
Right. Which is exactly what we see here. And that really segues into the next thing that I wanted to touch on, which is this through line of white guilt and how it's handled. We see especially Willow and Buffy as the examples, I think the bigger examples in this episode of white guilt. They reckon with the knowledge that they didn't have before. They learn something about the Chumash people. They learn about the missions, and they grapple with it. Willow and Buffy specifically in slightly different ways, and then of course we see other characters who don't grapple with it at all, Spike being the other end of that spectrum. This is something that I feel that I experience in day-to-day life when it comes to white people unpacking things that have happened to people of color, indigenous people, immigrants, saying sort of, this is bad. I recognize this is bad. This is really bad, and I acknowledge it. But I have to get my kid to their soccer practice. I have to make dinner. I have to deal with my life. So I recognize it's bad, but I'm sorry, or I feel bad, but I don't have anywhere to take it. And that's what this episode kind of leaves us with is that there's not action. And I'm wondering if there are ways in which you think the episode could have taken a more active stance. And of course, then that will likely parallel how, white people can be more active.
I think that one of the things that has been a constant in my life is kind of the white feminist who has a lot of guilt and doesn't know what to do, but really, really wants to acknowledge that there's something bad happened. And so I feel like I see that represented here quite well. And I see the end results of that represented here quite well, which is that, again, in wrestling with that and in that uncertainty and, this sort of inability to reconcile, to really, really, like you mentioned, nobody's stopped and had a conversation with us. Nobody asked the question of why are you here? Versus you mentioned other characters like Oz, multi-arc, gotta understand, try to be understanding. We're gonna build him a special little cage. There was efforts to really grapple with that, that character, and here there wasn't, right? And I think I think it really touches a deeper something that is really deep within white consciousness, white American consciousness, of just a complete inability of how knowing how to reconcile with the genocide of Native people. And I think there are lots of places you can look to see this occur. Even the Museum of the Native American on the National Mall in DC It is all their exhibits are contemporary Native stuff, and they never talk about the genocide in that whole museum.
What?
Yeah. If you ever go to DC and go to that museum, there is no mention of the genocide, and that is a particular political cultural choice, and like a societal amnesia or like a desire to not talk about it. But if the National Museum and the Smithsonian can't do it, why would we expect Buffy to be any better?
I wish sometimes that I were not as shocked by learning some of these things that I learn as I unpack my own whiteness and, and what has happened in this country and what happens in the world, because it's like all at one time I want to not be shocked, but I am just floored. I'm floored.
Well, and I think, I feel like this is part of this sort of intentional erasure of Native people and this desire that to keep us in the past as interesting artifacts, right? Which is why you see the woman in the beginning of the episode she's like in a museum and with the artifacts, and
right.
that is very much the way in which Native people want, it's easier to see us as in the past, and it's hard to see us as contemporary, because if you look at us as contemporary Native people who are still here, then you also have to acknowledge that it's a miracle we're still here, and we are constantly saying we have to talk about the genocide. We are not in the conditions that we are in because we wanted them or we created them. This was something that was done to us. And that's where you get into the idea of historical trauma. I feel like Huss would be the manifestation of historical trauma, right? Because he says, I am here as vengeance, right? And so in my world, I'm other people might be like, this is a bad dude. And me, I'm kind of this guy makes sense.
Yeah. Something that I would love to hear from you about too is just, we're talking about some of the actual characters in the show, but obviously this is a television show and there are creators behind it. And Joss Whedon is a white cis dude, and many of the people, if not all of the people at this point in time in that writer's room, were white people. And I think, white creators certainly have a responsibility to use our platforms to elevate the voices of people who have less of a platform than we do. But I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how that can be done more responsibly.
Well, it's hard because, again, I give them credit for even trying, because I think oftentimes, because it was a complex and it was a little nuanced, more than I often see in other arenas around Native stuff, especially when it's not created by Native people. And so in that sense, I'll give them their due around that. But I think what you are witnessing is very much a white lens on the California missions, and very much a California take on it, right? And to the extent that in the end, again, the lack of the lack of engagement with that character, but also in the end, the decision that oh, we're just going to kill them, and then we're going to express our guilt about the killing of them again. So there's everything to me about that screams, this is what it looks like when white people write about Native people from a really limited knowledge base.
Right, which I think points us in the direction of the thing that white creators can do to be responsible is bring in people of color, bring in Indigenous people, bring in queer people, bring in trans people, bring in disabled people. If that is the storyline that you're writing, that involve those actual human beings in the creation of those stories, so that it is more nuanced, it is more truthful, and it is less with that lens that we see this episode in.
Yeah, and maybe with some maybe with a hint of compassion. Nowhere in this episode, or at least from the parts that I reviewed, is there any sort of attempt to really sort of have some compassion for this vengeful spirit and to try to sort of engage. And again, I go back to I think a lot about trauma and historical trauma and what does it mean to heal. And I think that part of what we see here is the trauma of a people. And rather than heal it or try to engage in it, you see them just do what has always been done, just try to kill it or make it disappear.
Yes. Is there anything that you want to talk about before we wrap up today? Something that I didn't ask or bring up?
No, I'm excited to like be in the middle of this particular Venn diagram for this particular conversation.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am that Jenny and I both are to have your voice in this episode of the podcast. It's just really powerful to hear from you and to have been given the opportunity to have a conversation around some of these things with you. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of this with all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for the invitation. And I really love talking about this. So thanks.
Wow. Thank you so much to Coya for taking the time to talk to us. That was, I feel like I learned so much.
Yeah, same. Coya, thank you. And all of you should definitely follow Coya and Coya's work. She's on Twitter at Coya Hope, CoyaHope on Twitter. And you can find out a lot more about the work that she does and just tap into an incredible, incredible resource. It was such a pleasure to speak with her. And I hope to have her back to talk even more because it was really, really rad. I also want to mention that I did another interview with somebody named Jersey. Jersey works at Race Forward in New York City. She's a 2-time immigrant born in the Dominican Republic and raised in Spain before she moved to the U.S. We had a really wonderful conversation about this episode, but when we found Coya, we prioritized that conversation in the episode. We're going to put the conversation that I had with Jersey up on Patreon. That's for everybody. It's for free. You don't have to be a patron. You can just find it on our Patreon page. So that'll be up now. And we're really hoping, and I think we will achieve this goal, to have Jersey in another episode in the future because it was phenomenal. She's phenomenal.
As the objective third party who was not part of the conversation, but who has heard the conversation, I want to highly recommend to everybody that you all listen to it. It is really fantastic.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get back into the episode. Okay. So Willow
is detailing some atrocities.
Yes.
As she calls it. And it is. Of ears being removed, of people being hanged, like all the stuff that we've already seen.
Forced labor.
Oh, right. Herded into the mission and exposed to diseases. Now, is syphilis, can you get syphilis in any other way other than through sexual transmission?
Why are you asking me? I don't know if I can answer.
No, I'm asking like the world.
Oh.
I didn't mean like I need an answer from you, Christian Russo. I'm just saying like, that one stuck out to me. Smallpox, malaria, okay. But syphilis?
Right. Yeah. And
it's like an all-star, like, special reunion tour of some of the greatest diseases to ever take the stage.
And everyone's beginning to fight. Like your standard family holiday, right?
Yeah, very Thanksgiving.
Very.
Giles and Willow are having the imperialism versus white liberal people.
Yes, exactly.
Argument, of course.
Maybe we should be helping him, bringing the atrocities to light, says Willow. Like Willow, I mean, we're talking about Buffy as like the embodiment of white guilt, but really it's Willow who's the embodiment of white guilt in this episode, where she's just like, we have to do something. What do we do?
Right.
This is bad. That's the problem. Nobody ever has an actionable thing. And so in the end, whatever, we'll get there. Angel, not terribly stealthy.
I think he's lost his edge.
I think he lost his edge. Oh, it's good.
Then Ander and Zanya, of course.
Ooh, yes,
Xander and Anya show up. And everyone's like, wow, Xander, you look terrible. Except for Buffy, who's like, you didn't bring rolls?
Right.
Which is pretty tight.
But Buffy has she's mission driven. You just said that last week.
Capricorn in action.
Yes. She just needs to have her goddamn Thanksgiving fucking dinner. Then Xander makes a comment about vengeance demons. And like, obviously we kill vengeance demons. And to Anya being like, excuse me, but a demon has to do what a demon has to do.
Right.
I didn't
they're
know
fighting, and then Willow and
way.
Giles flare back up. And Buffy keeps escaping to Baste, escaping to add condensed milk. And then there's one more knock at the door.
Knock, knock, knock. Vamp on fire. Spike is here begging to be let in. Please feed me. Please don't let me burn. And they're like, why would we ever?
And yet,
well, because
he's got information.
He has information about the initiative, which
it is wild that Buffy doesn't just like stake him immediately, though.
Yeah. But
you gotta suspend your disbelief. But they've got something special.
They've had something special from the beginning.
Oh yeah, remember when they all teamed up?
Yeah.
Aww.
Like they have like feelings past just bad vamp, good vamp. As
soon as he gets inside, he goes from like throwing himself at their mercy to like,
oh, the ropes are too tight, it pinches, and
Yeah.
I'm too hungry to remember everything.
Yes,
And I wouldn't say no to a brandy.
I don't remember if I talked about this in the initiative last week, but I came across this quote that I'm going to just paraphrase from Joss, who basically was like, once Cordelia was gone, we really needed a character who was just going to be rude to people outright. You know, the quote was something like the neighbor who's like, can I have your sugar, but then is also just rude to your face. Like, can I borrow some sugar, but also fuck off? And so we get more of that with Spike. I mean, Spike is giving us a lot of what Cordelia would give us. I mean, apart from the entire monologue that he has about being an imperialist, but
Right. Which she goes into right here.
Yes.
And he talks about conquering nations and like you can't like boo-hoo over like this is what Caesar did and this is what Americans, right, colonists did.
This is what colonizers do.
Right. And Xander's like, hey, this is like starting to like sound like something that makes sense. And Giles is, of course, like, I made a lot of these points earlier, but nobody wanted to listen to Cool Dad.
And did you notice that it's all the men in the room who are agreeing?
Are like, wow, yeah, what a
this?
great idea. Yeah, what the fuck is this? Like, why would you accept, like, in order to whatever?
In order to get to X, you must destroy the entirety of Y.
Yeah, that's...
Well, but you know what's interesting to me about this monologue, though, is it makes me feel a lot less gross than watching the performance of white guilt that we see in the episode. Like,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't know if that's a good feeling or a bad feeling I have. But Spike is like very direct about his intentionality. It's sort of how I feel about like racism in general. It's like when you have people who are like, I feel this way and I am racist and I am blah blah blah. It's like you can see who that person is. And they're less dangerous to me when you can see who they are and they're vocal about who they are than when they're people who are like, but I'm a good person and I just love Thanksgiving.
Yes, I love everyone. And
that's really like to me, that's more dangerous. And so
somebody who professes goodwill and thinks like that exonerates them from having to examine anything going on inside of themselves.
Exactly. So for that, I am really here. I mean, and Spike's monologue is a brilliant monologue and delivered brilliantly by James Marsters. So I got to give him a shout for that. But yeah, and Spike also has a line. I don't know if it's part of the monologue or if it comes after the monologue, where he basically like Willow's like, but if we could just talk to him, and Spike is like, you exterminated his race. What could you possibly say that would ever make him feel better? Which is
such a good question.
Yes, Spike. Yes, like I'm really here for that because it's true. It's like, what are you going to do here? What are you going to say, Willow? What are you going to do? So Spike briefly tells us what happens when vampires don't eat, which I was excited about because I just asked about it last episode.
Right.
They just turned into little skeleton vampires. And
so then who's along with his squad?
Yes.
Of
he's resurrected
spirits that he has raised.
Mm-hmm.
Shows up at Giles' house, and Buffy has a pretty unfortunate line where she shouts at them, "You can have casinos now."
Oh, yeah. You know, I actually appreciated this line because I felt like it called out the ridiculous. I mean, I feel the purpose of this line
was not to like express like,
but we gave you this thing. It's literally to express like, are we fucking serious as a people? That we're like, we took away your entire land, all of your land. We robbed you of your fucking
genocide.
But here, have a casino. You know, like I mean, so like, yeah, it's an unfortunate line that Buffy speaks, but in the context of the show, I was here for
more
it.
of a call out than.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why it was there. And so we see a little bit of the siege, and
Spike
then
gets arrowed. And he's
Spike,
like, hey!
Right, we didn't even mention that Spike is tied in a chair and just being so Spike while tied up. Which
yeah.
Now you know that when we post images and GIFs of Spike tied up in a chair, well, we're starting here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, starting here.
Starting now. So, we go to outside of the dean's house because, of course, something we didn't mention is that they think that the next target is the dean because it's somebody in power, somebody in the position of power. So then we get Anya
with her pie line.
Yeah, with her pie line, like really crushing on the dean's wife, and then meeting Angel for the first time.
Oh yeah,
he's large and glowery, isn't he?
Right,
she says with her sexy eyes.
And then is it Xander who is also like, "Are you evil again?"
Yes. And Angel's so irritated, like, "Oh, I'm never gonna shake this."
I haven't been evil for a long time, guys. Then in an act of petty crime, Angel breaks some bike locks with his bare hands.
Yes.
So that
we get this beautiful scene.
Oh, yeah.
It's like an E.T. or really probably Stranger Things is the most recent incarnation of kids on bikes saving the day.
Yeah.
And we learn, because the reason that they're getting on those bikes is because, of course, they've put it all together. A warrior, Hoos is a warrior. And so for him, he's going to want to kill the warrior, who is the Slayer.
Buffy in some position of power.
So Scooby's on bikes. This is really fun. I really like this. I like them on bikes racing up to the house. And then I want to just point something out. I never see anything. I always read like flubs or like, oh, you could see this in the scene or like this in the shot. I never see it. I saw it in this scene.
What'd you see?
So when we go back to the siege, which first of all, Angel calls Giles, and Giles is like, that was just somebody. Like everyone needs to get better at lying. There's the scene where all of the Shumash spirits are jumping through the glass, and it's like this glass breaks and this glass breaks. And I think it's like 2 Shumash spirits after Hoos comes in. You can see like 8 sets of hands holding the wall while the person jumps through the window. And so I was really excited because nobody even told me. I just saw it. I rewound it and was like, I think I just saw a bunch of hands.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so go back if you want to see that. You're welcome. That I have the eyes of a tiger. The eye of the tiger. Cats have good vision, don't they? No? Okay.
So the Scoobies roll back up and they're trying to help out, fighting these dudes that will not die because they are spirit based.
Yes.
We presume. Also, doesn't Giles have neighbors? There is like a full-fledged Rock'em Sock'em.
But they're in Sunnydale.
Yeah. Oh,
Just
that's
another
true.
day.
Everyone's like, oh, stay indoors. I hear a supernatural rumble outside.
I'm telling you, the best business to be in Sunnydale is glass replacement. Those guys
totally.
Are making so much money replacing windows.
Constantly.
There's a great moment where Angel comes over and like snaps the neck of one of the spirits, and Anya looks at Willow and is like, "What is he like when he is evil?"
Yeah.
Giles, I believe, maybe gets knocked out. I mean,
dude, he's getting his head smashed against the wall repeatedly.
Are we counting it as a knock?
We don't see him knocked out, so I don't think we can count it.
And then we get this contrast of Spike coming out of this monologue that he's delivered this so eloquently, whatever, and then he just is like, a bear.
A bear? You made a bear?
I didn't mean to.
Undo it!
Just scared shitless of this bear.
Yeah.
Which is really funny, because why would he be scared of the bear? The bear, like, what's the bear going to do to him? The bear can't stake him or set him on fire.
Maybe he's just got deep root. Like maybe that's some of the humanity that's left inside of him.
Maybe Spike
fear.
Spike had a run-in with a bear before he got sired.
Could be.
So
also, if the bear bites his entire head off, decapitation is a.
Oh, right. That's right. Somebody got decapitated with a cymbal back in season 1. I remember that because it's a lyric. Cool. So
we got Xander throwing dinner rolls at the bear.
Yes, which is really, really great. And then Buffy realizes that the knife, the Shumash knife, is the thing that can hurt Hoos.
Right.
And she kills him. And
we're supposed to be like, hooray?
Well, right. And that's the thing, is that this is where the episode takes a turn that is hard to stay on board with, because we've had this conflict. We've been set up with this conflict, white guilt and, the extermination of a race and blah, blah, blah. And then the end result is kind of just like, well, we have to do this thing.
It's kill or be killed.
It's kill or be killed. So we have to do this thing. And there's not that it would have been like the perfect episode if it had taken a turn after this and it was like they brought to light the Shumash people and like what actually happened to them, and like the cultural center like redid their exhibit and like whatever. But like that could have been like one way that, we're not gonna fix it, but at least we're not just gonna like leave
it right here, yeah,
and leave it there, and maybe there was some like subtlety that was trying, but and we've talked about this in this podcast before, like this is not the place for subtle writing, because you're not going to have the majority of your audience watch this and pick up anything from it, but like, oh, okay. And then they all had Thanksgiving dinner. Like, and then it was fine. Like, I just...
And Xander's syphilis is clearing right up.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do like a little unpacking of like everything that happened.
Right.
But
Willow says she's like disappointed in herself because like just a few minutes of conflict and
she wanted or aimed to kill.
Right.
Right. And Giles, to be fair, I mean, I do understand Giles' point of like, well, you were in conflict, and when your body is in conflict, it's fight or flight. You're not like really reasoning through your politics at that moment, which is a fair point, but it ends on this comedy beat, and I'm here for the comedy beat if it wasn't for
I wish we could have had something a little more substantial before the comedy beat.
Yes, something, and we didn't, and that's I think why this episode is as controversial as it is. It doesn't. If it intended to unpack something, I do not feel that it really did. I mean, like we said at the beginning, it's not an episode of Friends where we're all just having turkey. Like, it did call out the fact that like this holiday is connected to literally us coming here and just taking over an entire culture and being like, hey, fuck off, you can have a casino and we're gonna eat turkey to celebrate. And that's really fucked up. And so that, like, I want to give the episode and the writing and the intentionality. Right? I do, in a lot of the work that I do, I talk about the difference between intention and impact. And I think some of the intentionality here was to bring light to something that I think deserves to have a lot of light brought to it. You know, there's still people out there that think Christopher Columbus was a great guy. And, you know, it's important that we bring to light that is not the case at all.
But you don't get points if you run the football to the middle of the field. You have to get it all the way to the end zone.
To get it all the way to the end zone. And so I think that we both wish, and I think probably anybody listening to this wishes, that this had been carried a little bit farther. Also, nice football
just
metaphor on your
analogy for Thanksgiving. It's no big deal. Just tossing the old pigskin around.
But I do want to at least give a little nod to the fact that we made it through the whole episode with everybody keeping the secret that Angel wasn't there. And then Xander. It's like, yeah, it is like the gang's all together, especially with Angel being here. And we end with this class. I mean, this is like one of the most classic shots in the series of everybody. It's like Buffy's POV, and everybody just looks at her like, "Rrr," and then the episode just ends like kind of deadpan. So I would like to encourage emails from you all on this episode. Jenny and I try to be as responsible as we can when it comes to unpacking really big issues around race and sexism and all sorts of things. And this episode in particular, you know, at the end of the day, we are two white ladies and
just waiting to be called in.
Yeah, 100%. And so we mentioned this at the top of the episode, but we will be doing a mailbag episode for everyone, a public, a free, open source mailbag episode. And so, you know, we want you to write to us about a variety of things, but please write to us about your thoughts on this episode and also our handling of the discussion, because it would be great to sort of bring some more voices into the mix as well. BufferingTheVampireSlayer@gmail.com is how you do that. So Jenny, I think we should probably get a little sexy.
Let's do it.
Sexual Attention Award.
Yes. The time has come once again to discuss any and all tensions of the sexual nature. From our last episode, season 4, episode 7, The Initiative. Wow, we had a broad span. There was, abstract concepts. There was a mechanical item in the mix. There was a fantastical beast.
Tell us who won.
Yes. Well, Buffy and the Froyo Machine were in 4th place with 13%. Boo.
Well, I mean.
Then in 2nd place with 26% of the vote, we had Jander and A Sense of Purpose. Nice work, boys. In 2nd place, 28% of the vote, Harmony and her unicorn poster. I'm sorry, Kristen. But I think you'll just be thrilled to hear that in very first place with 33% of the vote, we have Willow and the Death of Love.
Okay, fine. But in my heart, Harmony and the unicorn get it. And also, I want to say there were many, many write-ins for Giles and the flare gun. And We apologize.
A gross oversight.
For our oversight
here at
there.
the Department of Sexual Tension. We sincerely apologize for any and all inconvenience this has caused.
Yes, we do. So let's get to this week's nominees, shall we?
Well. There's one person who will definitely win. Half of every nomination for this episode has one person in common, and that person is Anya. We've got Anya and Xander digging. We've got Anya and ritual sacrifice. We've got Anya and dying together. And we've got Anya and the word girlfriend.
Ooh, that's a good one.
How will you choose? I do not know, but please exercise your right to vote in this beautiful democracy. We will have the poll up on Twitter for 1 week. We are at BufferingCast, and we want to hear from you. Thank you.
Anya, congratulations on
In advance
on your win. So here we are on the other side of sexual tension, and we hope that you enjoyed our discussion of pangs. We hope that we were responsible and did right by you all with this episode. I'm glad that we had a chance to unpack some of it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it's over. Good. Now more than ever, gravy.
Yeah.
I'm Jenny Owen Youngs.
You are Jenny Owen Youngs.
And when I'm not watching Buffy and making this podcast with Kristen, I am making songs. And you can learn more about me and hear some of those songs at jennyowenyoungs.com. And you can give me a shout on Twitter whenever you please at Jenny Owen Youngs.
I am Kristen Russo, and when I'm not talking about Buffy and imperialism, I am trying to help LGBTQ people and their families. You can find more about me at KristenNoline.com. That's KristinnOeline, and that's also my Twitter and Instagram handles. And you should also check out My Kid is Gay, a resource that I run for parents and families and educators of LGBTQ people. It's really a great resource for anyone to learn about these things. So go on over there, check that stuff out.
Buffering the Vampire Slayer is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BufferingCast. And you can send us emails about anything, especially for our upcoming mailbag episode, at bufferingthevampireslayer@gmail.com.
Hell yes. Also, you can support our work, keep us chugging right along over here by going iTunes. You like that? Is that funny joke?
It just made me think of like chugging beer. I don't know why.
You can keep us chugging beer.
Yeah, chugging gravy.
By heading on over to iTunes and rating and reviewing the show. You can buy some sweet, sweet merch. We have a brand new fucking shirt. It's a fucking alewife sitting on the back of a demon. It says support your local alewife, and it rules. And you should get it. Isabella Rotman designed it. The infamous designer of Smash the Demon Lizard Patriarchy is back again, bringing us an alewife shirt inspired by Beer Bad and Heather Hogan. Gift upon gift. So you can find that at bufferingthevampireslayer.com and going to store. You can also, of course, join us in our Patreon family. The Patreon link is also on that aforementioned website. And you can join us at the $5, $10, or now $25 level. You can get exclusive merch. You can get the songs in advance. You can get a family, which is what we all have over there.
I was like, what?
At the $50 level, you get a family.
Yeah.
But no, you can join our family. I think it is a family over there. Any level joins the secret Facebook group, and it's really a beautiful community, a beautiful family over here.
Truly. Let's, instead of howling like wolves, let's howl like coyotes this time.
Coyotes, okay, yes. Very
in
distinguishable.
honor of Hoos.
Okay.
Well, coyotes are like very high-pitched.
Oh.
Remember how creepy they are? Maybe let's
Kind
just be
of.
wolves. It's fine. Yeah, everybody Google coyotes howling. It's terrifying. Till next time. Woo!
We have survived incredible odds. You must know that we are Sitting Bull's people. You must know who we are. We survived Wounded Knee, a massacre. We are survivors. We are fighters. And we are protectors of our land. So it's nothing for you to come and say, we want to do this. We want to be friends with you. It was very astute for you to go around the northern boundary of Standing Rock as we see it in modern times. Those are ancestral lands, 50 yards, 100 miles north is treaty territory. So you are bound by the laws of this country to adhere to those laws that are federal laws for the protection of our people. So we are not stupid people. We are not ignorant people. Do not underestimate the people of Standing Rock. We know what's going on, and we know what belongs to us, and we know what we have to keep for our children and our grandchildren. You mentioned nothing about the water. You don't want to infringe on native lands, but our water is our single last property that we have for our people. And water is life. Miniwi choni. You as a human being cannot drink oil. You need the water to survive. 75% of our body is water. We believe in the natural systems that we have. We have fought for that. We have sacrificed for it. And we're still waiting for the compensation for the building of the dams. We are still owed on the construction of those dams $339 million. That's probably a drop in the bucket for your oil company. We are owners of 13% of the hydropower on that river. How do you separate it? How are you going to separate the oil from the water when it's contaminated? How are you going to do that? Only the Creator can do that. Maybe in your high technology, you think you can. But this is our property. This is our homeland. And we are protected by statute. And we will do whatever we have to do to stop this pipeline, as we do 55 other pipelines proposed in North Dakota. Dakota, North Dakota, Mia Ma Dakota, I'm Dakota. Dakota means friend and ally. This is Dakota territory. This is treaty territory. This is where you agreed not to come into my territory. We signed a treaty of peace that you would not come here. So we have put on our best. We will put our best warriors in the front. We are the vanguard. We are Hunkpapa Lakota. That means the horn of the buffalo. That's who we are. We are the protectors of our nation, of Ochete Shakoi, the 7 council fires. Know who we are. We will put forward our young people, our young lawyers, who understand the weasel words now of the English language, who know that one word can mean 7 things. We understand the forked tongue that our grandfathers talked about. We know about talking about both sides of your mouth, smiling with one side of your face. We know all the tricks of the Washichu world. Our young people have mastered it. I have mastered your language. I can speak eloquently in the English language my grandmother taught me. But I also know the genetic psyche. And I also have the collective memory of the damages that have occurred to my people. And I will never submit to any pipeline to go through my homeland. Mitakease.
Dana Schwartz, and this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast for Peacock's original series, Those About to Die. On this podcast, I go behind the scenes with the show's cast and creators to learn how they brought their brutal vision of Rome to life.
Gosh, people will freak out.
Rise or Die launches on July 18th. Watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you know what lies within nothing?
No.
Do you know where it ends? Do you want to know?
Yes.
Counterbalance, a high fantasy audio drama. Season 2, coming 15th of October 2023. Learn more on trilunas.com.